And then they tell us to give up our rights and liberties. And they tell us to submit to a surveillance state. And they tell us to stay in our homes and give up our jobs and our way of life. And look at what it does to us. Think about all the young children growing up right now with all the fear, the non-stop fear, constantly being blamed on false threats, whether it's a boogeyman in a cave or supposedly some deadly germs. And with regards to those deadly germs, please look into this fact. In 1968, coronavirus was coined. In 1968, you had the first case of HIV. You've heard how COVID and HIV have intertwined in a variety of headlines in the last 2 years. Also in 1968, the FDA approved fentanyl, one of the biggest problems in this country right now. I'm sure there's a bunch of people in earshot who know someone who's suffering from fentanyl and addiction. After 9/11, we got rid of the Taliban in Afghanistan. The Taliban did not want poppy plants and opium in their country. We killed the Taliban, and we brought back the poppy and opium production, and now the world is flooded with heroin and fentanyl. And Big Pharma is making the biggest profits they ever have. All over the streets, people are addicted to not only heroin, they're addicted to things like Percocet 30s. And Big Pharma is gloating about how much money, how many record profits there are right now. You guys think about this. The Bible, Genesis 11:9. Genesis 11:9, if you're not familiar, is where the Tower of Babel, the story ends. The Tower of Babel, the tower that divides the world, it ends in Genesis 11:9. The majority of the world writes the date, September 11th, 11/9. And stop me if you've heard this one before, but from the day that Obama took office to the day that Osama was killed was exactly 119 weeks. 119. And they said Osama was killed in Pakistan. Please look up the founder of Pakistan. He was killed on September 11th. Go figure. There's also something known as the 9/11 of Chile, where the CIA went in and overthrew their leader. That also happened on September 11th. That was our CIA. Speaking of the CIA, George Herbert Walker Bush, not to be confused with George Walker Bush, who was the president when 9/11 happened. He was the 11th director of the CIA. George H.W. Bush, the 11th director of the CIA on September 11th, 1990, 11 years to the day of the attack, he gave a speech about a new world order, a world freer of terrorism. And we all know what happened 11 years later. Again, New York, the 11th state, the buildings that look like an 11 that came down after flight AA-11. 11 is the master number in numerology. You might think numerology is stupid. You might think astrology is stupid. You might think that's old world fashion stuff. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you, but the people who rule over us, it's very important to them. They use it every single day. And again, notice the number 119. If you don't know how numerology works, you just add a bigger number until you compress it to either a single digit or the number 11 or 22. 1 plus 1 plus 9 is 11. Before 9/11, one of the biggest tragedies in this nation's history was JFK. He was killed on 11/22. 11 is the master number, 22 is the master builder number. And here we are in 2022 trying to undo what this corrupt cabal does to us every single day, using this occult knowledge to torment us. Now, if you've never heard this word before, please look it up. Gematria. G-E-M-A-T-R-I-A. The word gematria is a biblical practice. It is the practice of coding numbers into words. And the reason you must know this practice is because it reveals what's really being done. Again, I just told you that from when Obama took office to when Osama was killed was exactly a span of 119 weeks. And again, he was killed in Pakistan. He was killed in Pakistan, Osama, so they tell us. But again, the founder of Pakistan was also killed on September 11th. Right now in Pakistan, they are underwater. And in astrological terms, people might blame Poseidon for the current flooding of Pakistan. The old world would say, oh, that's Poseidon that's done that. Well, are you aware that on the World Trade Center was the trident of Poseidon? You can go down to the museum right now and they have an exhibit called Trident Strong. You guys, the trident is the spear of Poseidon. In Gematria, Poseidon equals 119. Osama bin Laden was killed in Operation Neptune Spear. Operation Neptune Spear. Neptune is Poseidon in astrology. You guys, numerology and astrology are very important to the people who govern over us. It's old world occult knowledge that's always been shared and held by the ruling elite. Nothing has changed from the time of Babylon to right now. This is New Babylon. And again, if you learn this knowledge, you will see through what's going on every single day. That is not an exaggeration. Just as it's so current, you guys, I want you to think about this one too. We just heard about the death of Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth just died exactly 911 days after the pandemic was declared. The pandemic was declared March 11th, 2020. She died September 8th, 911 days later. Of course, Corona means crown. She wore the crown. Now she's been replaced by her son, King Charles. If you got a question for us, come talk to us, sir. You don't got to yell at us and walk by. We're happy to answer your questions. Yeah, it takes courage to come confront somebody face to face instead of scream at them from a mile away. But anyhow, you guys, here's something I really want you to look into. I want you to understand why there were 2 towers that became 0, that became 1. It's the same reason that right before coronavirus, the same people who are now profiting from the pandemic had something called Event 201. If you don't know about this, please look it up. You all got your smartphones in your pocket. Type in Event 201. You will see it took place October 18th, 2019. It was a simulation of a coronavirus pandemic put on the exact same day the military World Games began in Wuhan, China. That's a major coincidence. And some of us use that word way too much to dismiss what's really going on, like these ladies walking by looking and laughing.
Took place in your city.
Anyhow, Event 201 was the coronavirus simulation. Again, Queen Elizabeth just died on September 8th. You might recall earlier this year, Charles had COVID, and then they said the Queen caught COVID shortly after. Well, from the day that the Queen caught COVID to the day that she died was exactly 201 days later. And again, exactly 911 days after the pandemic was declared. On 9/11, 2 towers became 0 before they became 1. I'll tell you something else, another big 201 in history, because it's another hot topic right now. 5 years before the World Trade Center was opened on April 4th, 1973, there was a major tragedy in this nation. April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. And exactly 201 days later, this nation had its first gun control laws.
Love you, brother.
This is going on all throughout history, you guys, these same patterns. Creating major tragedies and then taking away our rights and liberties. And blaming it on boogeymen, patsies, people who aren't really responsible for the crimes. Again, you guys, there's that phrase in the Bible, my people suffer from lack of knowledge. I thank all the people who walk by and then stop to listen for a moment, but those people have been few and far between. For all of you guys who just walk by as we talk about the truth of the biggest lie that's resulted in the deaths of millions of people, understand you are part of the problem. All of you guys who just believe what the authority tells you day after day, I want you to think about that word believe. Spell it out. Spell out the word believe. How do we spell it? It has a bizarre spelling. B-E-L-I-E. Lie. B-E. Be the lie. How many of us are being a part of the lie? How many of us don't care about the lie? You guys, This is why we continue to be tormented and harassed by the ruling class psychopaths who govern over us. The problem with this world is we've been raised. Well, think about it, you guys. How many of you really wanted to be in that classroom, sitting there at your desk, getting those mostly meaningless lessons while you were told you were so free? We're going to pause for the fire department. I'm going to pass the microphone to my friend Arthur. Another great researcher in this community who wants to make this world a better place, is right here from New York. We need the rest of New York to become like homegrown Arthur right here. Listen to this man speak. He's brilliant.
Hello everybody, my name is Arthur. I'm from the Bronx. You see my skin color? A lot of you say, I'm not going to listen to that guy because he's got the same skin color as me.
There you go.
And that's the problem.
There you go.
You guys are judging people on the color of their skin and not what they're telling you. When I came across this work, I was like, let me see if it's true. So what I did, I applied the information that I was listening to verify if in fact what the person was telling me was factual. One of my favorite movies is something I just spoke about moments earlier. Jay-Z, one of the biggest rappers out of New York City.
There you go.
He put out the greatest album of all time, The Blueprint, the same day that the Twin Towers fell. Well, that's just a coincidence, Arthur. No. Jay-Z is the CEO of Rockefeller Records. The Twin Towers were made possible by the Rockefeller brothers, David Rockefeller and his brother Nelson Rockefeller, who was the governor in 1968. Remember that number, 1968. David Rockefeller, he brought the idea to the forefront, and his brother, who was the governor, he signed it into legislation in 1968. Now, why does that matter? Just think about it. The CEO of Rockefeller Records drops his album the same day that the Rockefeller buildings come down. Did you guys know that the Twin Towers had nicknames? They did. One was called David, and the other one was called Nelson, after the Rockefeller brothers. So literally, the Rockefellers came down and dropped the same day that the CEO of Rockefeller Records dropped the Blueprint. And what does blueprint mean? Well, it's a design plan, and that's what 9/11 was. Oh, speaking of 9/11, what are the odds that 911 was made the emergency dialing code in 1968? Remember 68? The name Sean Carter equals 68 in his language of gematria.
Yes, sir.
You guys know who died on the 68th day of the year in 1997? The notorious B.I.G. He was the biggest rapper out of Brooklyn. The biggest rapper. He was literally the king of New York, but then he died 213 days after his daughter's birthday in a drive-by shooting, which equals 213. Just like how Tupac died 213 days after his All Eyes on Me album came out on February 13th. A drive-by shooting and death on both 213, but that's a different story. Back to 68.
LA 213 area code.
Yes, he died in 213 area code, Biggie Smalls. Back to 68, so Biggie Smalls dies on the 68th day of the year. You guys remember his debut single, Juicy? He said he wants to get paid and blow up like the World Trade. Wow, how did he know that? Because that song came out in 1994. But the Twin Towers fell in 2001. Wait, that's just a coincidence though. Just like that's a coincidence that Prince, he put out a song called Obama's Getting Ready to Bomb. Guys, ever heard it on YouTube? Prince, he put out a song called Osama is Getting ready to bomb.
And
In
that's
1999. That was what, 2 years before 9/11. How did he know?
in the Netherlands.
I gotta get back to New York. Gotta get ready for the bombs.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
Back to 68. George Bush graduated from Yale University in 1968. That same year, 911 was made the emergency dialing code. That same year, the construction began for the Twin Towers. Wow. You guys remember what I said about 97, right? Jay-Z became the biggest rapper in the year 97. You guys know who died at the age of 97? John Rockefeller, the grandfather of David and Nelson. Wow, another coincidence, man. How many does it take? You know, you guys want to know one more fun fact? 13 days, 13, remember that number because the Illuminati loved that number. 13 days after his album came out on September 14, 2001, Jay-Z put out a freestyle. You guys want to guess what he called it? He called it 911. Letting people know that his album dropped the same day that the Twin Towers dropped, and people didn't even catch on. The CEO of Rockefeller Records. Man, speaking of Jay-Z, think about it. He puts out his biggest album on 9/11, the day that Osama supposedly brought the towers down. And then what did he do 7 years later? He put out a song called "My President is Black" and got Obama elected. What's the difference between the name Osama and Obama?
BS.
The letters B and S, like bullshit.
Let's go, nigga. Talk that shit.
Speaking of bullshit,
Talk that shit.
how many Kobe Bryant fans are here? Raise your hands. Kobe Bryant.
What you?
Did you guys know he scored 81 points on his 666 career game? Did you guys know that?
Why 81?
Be honest, does anybody know that?
I did. Career record.
Well, in that same game, his teammates scored 41 points. Remember that number, 41. In gematria, the name Kobe Bryant equals 41. His last game, remember against the Utah Jazz, he took like 50 shots and still was able to score 60 points. Well, they took him out of the game with exactly 4.1 seconds left on the clock. 4.1. Like how he died in the helicopter crash 41 minutes after takeoff with the pilot named Ara Sabanya, a guy whose name equals 41. Man, and why is 41 so special? Well, because in gematria, USA equals 41, and that's why the towers came down on the day with 41 numerology. If you're new to this, if you're just listening to this first time, then all you have to do is search, what is gematria? Also, look into the Illuminati. There's not a conspiracy theory. The Illuminati is a real thing.
History.
And they control you guys every single day, and you don't even notice it. One more riddle before I end it. How many people ever came across the number 42? Anybody?
I said a lot of niggas had it.
Well, if you're a black person, then you probably know this. Jackie Robinson, the first black baseball player, he wore the number 42, right? Okay. Did you know his name Jackie equals 42? There was a black baseball player that came before him. His name was Moses Walker, who played exactly 42 baseball games, and his name equals 42. Actually, you know, speaking of 42, not too long ago I wrote a poem. You guys want to hear it? All right, it goes like this. Actually, I forgot. Let me just, what is it? Okay. Hey, let me just look at it, guys, because it's been a while since It's like slavery and bigotry. They do, too. You see, Black History Month is in February, and February equals 42. You see, that number has been stamped all over Black history. It's so true. The first black baseball player was Jackie Robb, number 42. If you write out Jackie, that sums to 42. There was a guy named Moses Walker who played 42 games. And what does his name equal? Well, 42. Think about the Martin show. He lived in apartment 42. And if you write out Martin, that sums to 42. His next door neighbor, Shanae, her name equals that too. You guys remember Ronnie King? Well, he was born on April 2nd. 4-2. You see, LeBron James, he lost to the Pacers by 42. And if you write out LeBron James, that sums to 42. His pops, Nate Thurman, he wore the number 42. LeBron was born December 30th. That's 42.
February.
Anthony Davis' birthday is 42 weeks before his too. What about his teammate Russell Westbrook, who set the triple-double record in a single season with 42? Oh man. You know, it broke my heart when DMX died because he was only 42. No, actually no. It broke my heart when he died because he overdosed on 42. It broke my heart when Mobb Deep died because he was 42.
Oh, Prodigy. Yeah.
Did you guys know that Whitney Houston died 42 days into the year and her nickname was The Voice, and that's 42?
Fire. Firehouse.
I want to send the rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman, who played Jackie Robinson in the film 42. He died on Jackie Robinson Day. And guess how old he was?
42.
Just to add on to what he was saying about 42, you just heard the tip of the iceberg. Let's not forget, you guys, Jackie Robinson was in World War II, and he was part of the tank brigade called the Black Panthers. Again, in 2020, they started the baseball season late, so they had to move Jackie Robinson Day from April 15th to August 28th, which was Jack Kirby's birthday, the author of Black Panther. And some of you might be out there looking up and saying, no, it says Chadwick Boseman died at 43. Yeah, they did change that after the fact, but go read the article from 3 months prior about him being 42 years old and battling cancer, and look up when his birthday was. It was in November. So how did he turn 43 in August, 3 months before his birthday? They did that because people are starting to catch on. People are starting to catch on. When we started this work, there was almost none of us. But now there's thousands of us worldwide, and we're trying to bring thousands more. And here in New York City, where one of the greatest injustices of the world ever happened. I know a lot of you guys still love Michael Jackson. Who likes Michael Jackson?
Yeah.
Did you guys see that on August 29th, what would have been Michael Jackson's birthday, they just announced the new moon mission? There was supposed to be the rocket launch on Michael Jackson's birthday, the Moonwalker. Remember, Michael Jackson turned 11 years old the year of Apollo 11. He was also the last performer right before 9/11. Of course, Apollo 11 was the moon mission. The moon mission, the Moonwalker. Michael Jackson turned 11 years old 40 days after the moon landing. Again, we're talking about gematria. Moonwalk equals 40 in gematria. So does United States. Special number to this nation's history. But again, on Michael Jackson's birthday this year, there was supposed to be a new moon mission, and it was going to last how many days, Arthur? They just announced a new moon mission from Michael Jackson on his birthday that was supposed to last 42 days. Now here's where this gets real interesting. It was going to end on the day, leaving 83 days left in the year. When did Michael Jackson first moonwalk? He moonwalked in 83 in Detroit, Michigan, Motown on the 42nd parallel, but also on the 83rd Meridian West. And in gematria, Michael Jackson equals 83. So does Detroit, Michigan. Really, on Michael's birthday, a new moon mission, 42 days long, ending in this big 83 ritual? Again, you guys, you're looking at what we're talking about, you'll find out how it's all synced up. The news, the government, the politics, the sports, pretty much everything you see on the screens every day. Part of one big script that's meant to control our minds and keep us from focusing on the things that we need to be focusing on. The fact that we're not really free. The fact that we're oppressed. The fact that we're lied to. The fact that as time goes on, we lose more and more of our rights and liberties, and in recent times we've even lost bodily sovereignty. We can't choose what we have on our face. You know, we can't choose what chemicals are flowing through our body if we want to participate in society. Again, you guys, you have to wake up to what is going on. Please look into Clade X. Clade X, the pandemic simulation of May 15th, 2018. It was the first coronavirus pandemic simulation. It was done exactly 666 days before the pandemic was declared on March 11, 2020. And I know almost everybody out there, no matter what your religious belief is, you know what it is with 666. It's the mark which you must have if you want to buy or sell. How many of you had to wear a mask, one letter off from Mark, if you wanted to buy or sell? And how many of you have had to do the same thing since by getting the jab?
Hey, what's good?
Think about it, you guys. Think about it. I listened to Anderson Cooper earlier this year tell me I wasn't a real man because I didn't get a jab. And then as he went to commercial, it said this segment is sponsored by Pfizer. Think about that, you guys. People are laughing at us. They know we're just going to march along like we don't care, like we're some kind of robots, like the truth doesn't matter, like the problems are too big for us as individuals. That's part of the problem. They are too big for us as individuals, but you know what? We need to realize that we can become a collective whole, and we can work together, and we can stop what's going on in this nation. There's a gentleman here right now. He's a teacher in this city. Well, at least he was. He was a great teacher. He's actually out here with one of his students who's a grown-up man right now. He recently was fired and lost his salary and his pension because he would not comply with the agenda. You know what? If every teacher in New York did what he did, he would have been fired and nobody else would have. That's what we're supposed to do as Americans, the land of the free, home of the brave, not those dictated to by Anderson Cooper or any of these cable networks. You know, we're not supposed to live in fear and say, oh my God, I could die. Let me go out and get this experimental jab. You know? And look at what they do to us now in 2022. Have you guys followed the headlines this year? If you guys are paying attention to the news, they started this year. It started in the UK and Australia. They said there's a new phantom heart disease, you guys. A new phantom heart disease. They can't figure it out, but they think it's going to take millions of lives over the course of the next 5 years. Really? Really? The U.S. a few months later started saying there's a new thing called sudden adult death syndrome. Sudden adult death syndrome? You guys, the problem is we have to be out here on the streets pumping this information out because we can't put it out online. The next thing I want to say I can't say right now because everybody streaming will lose their YouTube channel. And the sad thing is it's facts. I said it yesterday and a bunch of people lost their videos. But I will say this, I think I can get away with saying this much. On this September 11th, I want you to go home and I want you to listen to what Bill Gates said at his TED Talk in 2010. It's called Innovating to Zero. It's only about 7 minutes long. I want you to take those 27 minutes and listen to every word about what Bill Gates said in 2010, Innovating to Zero. At the 5-minute mark, he says how we can reduce the population, and it's going to blow your mind with what he says. And a lot of you, I'm sorry, I don't want to instill fear in your life, but if you did go out and get that thing from one of these big pharma companies, you better really look into nutrition and how to cleanse your body. Because he made a very specific statement about how we can reduce this population, and it might have something to do with companies like Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca and all the rest of the blood clot club. In Bill Gates' 2010 TED Talk, he doesn't just talk about how to reduce the population. He talks about how we need gas to be worth $5 to $10 a gallon, and he talks about how we need to go into Russia and Ukraine and secure all the spent nuclear energy fuel, because he says that's the secret. In fact, he just started his new nuclear experiment in Wyoming. If you guys don't know what Bill Gates is up to, Bill Gates is up to a lot of things, isn't he? He's now the biggest farmer in America. But anyway, Bill Gates just started an experimental nuclear reactor in Wyoming. They're building a huge pit in the ground. They're dumping spent nuclear energy fuel, and they're setting it on fire. And he's telling us that this is going to get us to net zero, but I don't know. I don't know. Our whole life we've been told that, you know, the spent fuel, it needs to be, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. And this is the same guy who's saying we need to reduce the population. You know, that this sounds like an experiment that could have consequences. You know, we need to start thinking about who we're allowing to rule over us. Is Bill Gates really a hero of the people? Is he someone who really goes out there and does everything out of the goodness of his heart? I don't think there's many billionaires in this world that are actually the greatest people. You know, if you look into Bill Gates, he's a conniving guy. He scammed a lot of people. He took a lot of people's ideas and made a lot of money off them and put a lot of other people out of business. He's kind of an evil genius. You know, you guys need to look into who Bill Gates is. You also need to look into who his father is. Bill Gates' father was big on eugenics. He's one of the main founders of Planned Parenthood. And think about this. Isn't it interesting that they even told us in the news that these vaccines that were developed to save us from the killer COVID, they said that they were developed with fetal material. That comes from abortion. So isn't it funny how his dad's legacy is abortions and his legacy is vaccines? And by the way, if you guys didn't know this, Bill Gates has the same birthday as Jonas Salk. In fact, check this out. Bill Gates turned 1 year old on October 28, 1956. That was the same day Jonas Salk, who created the polio vaccine, turned 42 years old. And on that same day, Elvis Presley was used as a prop to get the polio vaccine on live TV exactly 42 weeks after his birthday, years before he would die at age 42. Arthur just gave us a brilliant explanation of the relevance of this number and its history of being connected to death and other things. It's funny that in gematria, the word vaccine equals 42, and the COVID vaccine went live December 14, 2020, on Bill Gates' 42nd day of his age. The same man who operates out of Washington State, the 42nd state in order of statehood, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is directly across the street from the Space Needle, the world's biggest needle. There's a reason this man was chosen. It's not because he's compassionate. It's because he's symbolic. He has Jonas Salk's birthday. He operates next to the needle. His dad was big on eugenics. He's now publicly giving speeches on eugenics and getting away with it. I hope all of you who walk by who don't have 5 seconds to stand and listen to the information we're sharing, I hope you look into every word I'm saying, and I hope you realize it's all true, and I hope you think twice the next time somebody on the TV tells you to go out and get a pokey dope or give up your rights and liberties or whatever they want to scare you into doing. This game's not going to end until we end the game. You guys, there's no rulers if nobody follows the rules. And we need to realize that as people. You know, our government, through our slave school system, convinced us all that we need an authority ruling over us. That's a belief they taught us. Again, that belief word, the word with lie right in the middle. The truth is, the only law that matters in this world is natural law. Laws in accordance with the world we live in. For example, a natural law is if you walk off a cliff, you're going to fall. There are things that are certainties in this world. We know that if we're good to one another, it creates harmony in our community. It creates a better place. We know that when we're bad to one another, it brings evil. It brings problems. It's like dominoes. You know, you guys, I was just walking past a Catholic church last night, and I couldn't believe it. Just homeless people all outside in front of the Catholic church. This huge, beautiful building, you know, worth probably $1 billion. Again, you guys, I want you to think about the authorities. We trust so much these spiritual leaders, these government leaders, but are they really fulfilling what they need to fulfill? Are they taking care of us as a people? Are they helping lead us to a promising place? I think we all know the answer to that. And if we understand there's a problem, we have to understand it's our responsibility to solve these problems. That's why we're out here today. That's why we're trying to reach more minds and make this world a better place. And let me stop hogging the mic. We've got a lot of great speakers out here. Again, you guys, one more time before I pass the mic. Please know this. A lot of people do not know this about September 11th, 2001. Please look into George H.W. Bush's speech from 11 years to the day earlier. September 11th, 1990, he spoke very clearly about a coming new world order, a world freer of terror. And of course, 11 years later, his son was the president. George H.W. Bush was once the 11th director of the CIA. Keep that in mind. But again, on 9/11, the buildings that looked like an 11 came crumbling down on the 11th day of the month in the 11th state, after reportedly flight AA-11 hit the building. And still to this day, a lot of people don't understand that 3 towers fell on 9/11. It's amazing how we cannot know this at this day and age. Buildings 1 and 2 everybody knows about. But 7 hours later that day, building 7 fell. That means buildings 1, 2, and 7 fell. They called it the new Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor happened on 1/2/7, December 7th. Where does the number 127 fit in with 11? It's in mathematics. 127 is the 31st prime number. 31 is the 11th prime number. And recall on July 31st this year, R.I.P. Bill Russell, the 11-time champion, died, who was a Hall of Famer in 75, only to be dead after the 75th NBA season, after the Warriors became 7-5 in finals against the Celtics, giving... But also that day, besides Bill Russell, we were told that Osama bin Laden's right-hand man was killed. 11 years after Osama bin Laden in 2011. And again, from the day that Obama took office to the day that Osama died was exactly 119 weeks. The majority of the world writes to date September 11th, 11/9. Genesis 11:9 is where the story of the Tower of Babel ends, the tower that divides the world. Another thing to look into is the text Art of War. The longest chapter is chapter 11, called the 9 Situations. That chapter is 68 paragraphs long. In 1968, World Trade Center construction began. 911 was made the national emergency dialing code. George W. Bush graduated from Yale in Skull and Bones. From his birthday, July 6th to September 11th is a total span of 68 days. In gematria, the word terror equals 68. That's the year Muhammad Atta was born, the lead hijacker. That's also the year Timothy McVeigh was born. And if you're not aware, Timothy McVeigh, who blew up the Oklahoma City building, so they say, in 95, that came exactly 68 days after the nation's first counterterrorism legislation was ever passed. And that legislation was led by Joe Biden, the sitting president right now, and it was passed on Frank Keating's birthday, who was the governor of Oklahoma at the time. I want you to look into the book, The Final Jihad. There's a book written by the brother of the governor of Oklahoma at the time, the name Keating. Look up the book written by the author Keating, The Final Jihad. In the same book, there is a man named Tom McVeigh who blows up the same Oklahoma City federal building. You guys, we are living out planned rituals that those who govern over us know about. And then those tragedies are being used to scare us again into giving up our rights and liberties. And I'm going to pass this mic on to another homegrown, brilliant man right here from New York City, my man Victor. He's got a message for you too. Please stop and listen, you guys. Some of you are just... Oh, hold on.
It's not a speech, it's just a quick thing to everybody.
All right, guys, the cops are over here. They're like, who's organizing this? Do you have a permit? There's nobody organizing this. We're all here of our free accord. This is a First Amendment, and we're going to do our thing. I just wanted to say that. You don't have to be snitching and saying, oh, this person said we could be here.
Salute Mike to that. Salute Mike.
2020 of Albert Pike. From the day of the Albert Pike statue being torn down to the Capitol insurrection of January 6th was exactly 201 days later. The word Confederate equals 201, and the Confederate flag went through the city and the Capitol that day. Again, those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. How many of you know who Abraham Lincoln blamed the Civil War on? Look into Abraham Lincoln's speech. He said there never would have been an American Civil War without the sinister influence of the Jesuit order. And if you are not familiar with the Jesuits, again, they are the military order of the Catholic Church. Understand, if there's anybody walking by who's a Jesuit-educated student, I'm not talking about you. I know the college and universities are top-notch. The students are great. We're talking about the ruling Jesuits, like the Superior General, the leadership. But this number 201 is being used again and again to divide the people of not only this nation, but the world. Again, 2 towers became 0, became 1. I was in Arizona as a college student then, and what was on the local news every night after 9/11 was people beating up Muslim people. People that are innocent, peaceful people. And this was going on all over the nation. Everybody's local news, the national news. They instill fear and hate in our hearts through their rituals that are meant to keep us divided. United we stand, divided we fall, and that's what people need to understand. There's never been more division. Again, this is the land of the free. We should accept what people do as long as it's not hurting others. I want you guys to understand how sick the stuff is that's going on in this world. Remember how Anne Hesh just died recently? We all saw on the news they loaded her into an SUV while she was sitting up, and they were sure to show the number 63 on the SUV.